In this video, we are going to learn how to create a Sunday service flyer for New Year like this. A link to download the resources we'll be using will be given in the description so you can check them out to follow suit. Let's get into Photoshop. So here in Photoshop, the first thing I'll do is to create a new document. I'll click over here, create new document. We'll be working with a 4x4 inch document and I'll click on create. Next off is I'll create guides for my design. I'll come over to view and I'll click on new guide and I'll create on the 10% mark. After doing that, I'll also create on the 90% mark for the other guide. I'll create my 90% mark and I'll click on OK. Next off is to add my gradient. I'll come over here and I'll click on gradient. I've already set the gradient, so I'll just give you the Hex codes in the description. This is the gradient and I'll click on OK. I'll change the degree to somewhere around 38 degrees, so you can just work with whatever you feel fine, and I'll click on reverse, something like this, and I'll click on OK. Next off is I'm going to add my background. I'll come over here and I'll bring in this background first. I'll click it and I'll drop it over here in Photoshop. I'll click on OK. You press Ctrl T and you transform it out like this. You can click on OK. Next off is we set the layer styles here over to linear bond and you can click on OK. You can bring it somewhere to this place of your document just like this to align with the guides. Add a layer mask to the document and pick your brush tool using B on your keyboard. Next off is I'm going to brush over this place. Make sure that your foreground color is set to black. So I'm just going to brush over it like this. You can increase your opacity to 100%. I'm going to brush over here just like that, and I'll brush over the top too, like this. I'll click on OK. Next is I'll come over here and I'll bring my church background and I'll drop it here in Photoshop. I'll transform it out just like this and I'll click on enter on my keyboard. Next off is I'll come over here and I'll pick darken just like that, so they blend into one another. Next off is we can set the opacity of this background to somewhere around 79 or 80%, so that it just blends perfectly like this. If you feel that this is too much, you can come over to your layer mask and pick your brush tool and switch this to white. So when you brush this back, it brings back the color of the image that has been missing. So you can just do based on what you feel, and you can come over here and brush off again just like that till when you get it right. I'll click on OK. Next off is I'll bring in my noise into the document. So I'll bring in this noise and I'll drop it here in Photoshop just like that, and I'll click on OK. I'll set the layer style to overlay just like this and I'll click on OK. The next step is to bring in the texture also into the design, and we'll drop it here just like that and we click on OK. We set the layer style also to overlay and we'll reduce the fill to 40% or 50%, anyone that works well for you. Click on OK. Next up is you can bring in the dots also and we'll click on OK just like that. We set this also to overlay and we can reduce the fill somewhere around 70%. So we have something like this fill on our background. Next off is we can group everything together and name it using Ctrl G, and we can just name it background. Next off now is we have to input the details. Come over here and pick your text tool. We'll be using the font called Acrobat. So let's use the font Acrobat. We'll use color white as our text, as our color, and click on OK. So basically you add your church logo and the text here and you click on OK. Press Ctrl T and reduce the logo size basically to where it seems fit, and you click on OK. I'll press Ctrl A on my keyboard and I will center it just like that. I'll press Ctrl D to deselect, and you can just bring in the logo nicely here, just like that. Next off is I'm going to pick my text tool and I'm going to change the weight to black. This time I'm going to type Sunday. You can click on Ctrl A. You can reduce the tracking to -5% and we'll click on OK. Press Ctrl T on your keyboard to transform it out just like that, and you click on OK. You can bring it here. You can also reduce the tracking more a bit, somewhere maybe like 25, and you click on OK. Press Ctrl J on your keyboard to duplicate and just bring it here just like that. Pick your text tool and type service, and we'll click on OK. Bring in your ruler to this place just like that and come over to Sunday. Press Ctrl T to transform it to fill the ruler, and you click on OK. So you can take this ruler back. After doing that, press the two of them together, press Ctrl T and increase the size a bit. Click on OK. Next off is you press Ctrl G, right click, group them together, then select the two of them like this, right click and rasterize type. So when you rasterize type together, you have been able to join them together like that. So you can pick the two of them and name them Sunday. Press Ctrl E on your keyboard so that everything will be rasterized together. So you can bring this over here like that, Ctrl T and expand it a bit more, just like this. Ctrl T on your keyboard, right click here and pick Distort. Now we have to distort the text to make it look nice. So hold Shift on your keyboard while you are distorting and leave it just like that. You can come over here to hold Shift on your keyboard just like that. Distort to wherever you are okay with. And once you are done distorting, you can click on OK. Press Ctrl A on your keyboard, center it and center it. You can press Ctrl T, press Ctrl D to deselect. You can bring it over here and distort more further as much as you like. So basically you just keep distorting till when you are okay with it. So just distort till when you are okay with it, and make sure you follow the ruler guide so it will look nice when you export it. Press Ctrl A and centralize it just like that. Press Ctrl D. You can press Ctrl T now on your keyboard to reduce the size so that it won't be too big on the document. Click enter and you have been able to distort just like that. Next off is I'll pick my rectangle tool and I'll come over here and draw a nice rectangle here just like that, and I'll set my rectangle border to somewhere around 20%. So we have something like this. I'll pick my text tool and I'm going to use bold this time around. I'll create a new layer and I'll type here 730. So basically the text is not showing because the color we used is white. So you can sample from the background and you just use any color of your choice just like that, and you click on OK. So 7:30 a.m. on your keyboard, you type 7:30 a.m. or whenever the service starts, and church auditorium, the venue. So after doing that, you click on OK Press Ctrl T on your keyboard and reduce it. Press Ctrl A and select, just like that. Press Ctrl D. Pick the two of them together, select and align them, just like that, and you click on OK. Next up is you pick the two of them together. You can group them and call this date. You can call this venue and time. After doing that, you can decide to add your social media handles over in this place. And now finally we will add our lens flare. First we bring in this and we'll drop it in our document, just like that, and we'll click on OK. Press Ctrl T to transform it out, just like this, and click on OK. Come over to the layer style and change it to linear dodge, just like that. Set it somewhere around here so that it just blends with the document. Bring in the second lens flare and drop it also on the document. So we can just transform this a bit and you click on OK. Come over to the layer style and also change it to linear dodge. You can just drop it over here, just like that. Once you place it here, pick your brush tool, add the layer marks and pick your brush tool to brush off this side, just like that. You come over here, come over to filter, on blur, Gaussian blur, and increase the blur of the document. Increase the blur of the filter, So you come over here and you just add a nice blur to it, just like that, so that it will not shine too much in the document. You click on OK, just like that, and you can set the opacity of this one to somewhere around 70%. Click on OK. Press Ctrl J to duplicate it and bring this over to the other side here. You can reduce this opacity to somewhere around 40% so that it blends in together. Pick the 3 lens flare and press Ctrl G on your keyboard to group. You can rename this as lens flare. Like this, we've been able to create a nice Sunday service flyer like this. Thank you for watching this video. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next.